and saying that their language is Moldovan language and making it a kind of a Romanian language, rewriting the heroic pages of history, just erasing all these pages from the historic books, textbooks. That's what she has done, and it proves her words. The forced Romanization, the ouster of everything that points to the Moldovan identity is quite clear. To be broadly speaking, they are trying to reformat country that would fit to the neoliberal standards, and I can repeat once again all these facts in order to prove this thesis. The overwhelming part are Armenians of the ruling structure are Romanians. It's quite obvious that the main objective of the foreign officials who invaded the Moldova, they are trying to strip this country of independence and sovereignty, and we have made a lot of comments on that when we see that the military cooperation of Chisinau with Bucharest is being increased as a NATO member. We don't see any neutrality here. They are moving towards not even Romania, but where they are even absorbed by the neighbor states. Which is a country which is a NATO member. Moldovan military regularly participate in joint military exercises to align the compatibility of the armies. Compatibility against whom? They consistently erase the constitutionally recorded status of sovereignty and neutrality, which for many years ensured independence of the country. In March 2023, the party actions of solidarity, including the Constitution of Moldova, the words Moldovan language, and you remember that, was replaced with the term into Romanian language. The school program, instead of history of Moldavia, the history of Romania was introduced. And now the children are being taught following this textbook, falsified textbook. Regularly in various parts of the Republic, funerals of Romanian heroes are being opened up. Are there any heroes in Romania? Yes, there are, but not that imposed to Moldova. And all those who were, and right now, they are being declared, all those victims are declared heroes in Moldova. Aggressive expansion of the Bessarabia Metropolis of the Romanian Orthodox Church in violation of the borders of the canonic borders. The Russian media, including TV channels, are being blocked, replaced with Romanian TV channels. And I think that it's enough in order to update this topic with due account and referring to the facts. For Chisinau and the sovereignty of republic and national identity cultural code of the Moldovans, they completely ignore this. Except for one thing, this is an impediment. They view it as an impediment and obstacle. They prioritize the idea and target to serve the interests of the Western curators under pretext of implementing the so-called Euro integration project. The opinion of the Moldovan people is ignored. Moldova sees it and doesn't like this thing. Many flee abroad, and I cited the numbers today. It's sad to see how Russophobia is gaining momentum and eroding the Moldovan society, not because it is as it is, but because this poisonous acid is being poured on them by Sandu's regime, and back then it was a prosperous republic. Let's move on further. Do you have any other questions? Russia Today, please. Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Red Balkan. We have two questions to you today. Can you share the latest on the sale of the Russian share of to the oil industry of Serbia, and why Russia decided to sell its share to the company? Was it the decision a kind of satisfaction of Serbia's claims, which wanted to have functional oil company, including oil processing plant, although the Russian owner had a chance to stay in the country and because of the American sanctions and preserve its property before the situation with sanctions is resolved? Let me mention that in our country, all these talks concerning the oil company in Serbia are being headed by the Ministry of Energy. So if you let me, I will address this question to the Ministry of Energy, and we can ask for a comment for you of this ministry, because this is their scope of competence. And we will do whatever we can in order to provide you an answer. And thank you. And the second question, how can you comment the statement of the Defense Minister of France shortly before his visit to Zagreb that the combat aircraft Rafale was sold to Serbia and to Croatia due to strategic interest of the EU and NATO to progressively liberate Serbia from dependence from Russia and strengthen its ties with the Western countries? What dependence is truly detrimental to Serbia, and why strategic interest of the EU and NATO, and they prioritize the deterioration of relations between Serbia and Russia? There's nothing awkward to me, and throughout many years Serbia was compelled to disrupt mutually beneficial historic ties with Russia. The Western countries tried to drive a wedge into the Russia-Serbia relations in order to subjugate Belgrade to the interests of EU and NATO. But unfortunately, this all goes for the detriment of Serbia in order to make this country a kind of an obedient structure that follows the instructions of all the others, to strip off its self-identity, to make its voice weaker, to blur the cultural identity of Serbia, to impose some alien will and values. And along with that, the Western elite tries to purge from presence the traditional presence of Russia in the region, so that we cannot be presented there. So if we see the projects, we have a look at the projects, and we've already mentioned in your previous question about our exclusive focus on making this project prosperous one, I mean the oil project. If we have a look at other projects, they are not even pragmatic and beneficial. They're aiming to strengthen Serbia's prosperity, to strengthen cultural and humanitarian aspect of this country. In general, this is a beneficial policy for the benefit of Serbia and its nation. And in terms of the Western ideology, Serbia should be stripped of these benefits. The Western countries just seek their own agenda. It's a detrimental and awkward practice. Undermining of the Russia-Serbia political and trade and economic ties is an overall objective, a strategic objective of NATO and the EU to oust all third, as they claim it, countries from the Balkan region, both Russia, China, and Turkey, so that no one was present there. And their purpose is crystal clear, so that Serbia be dissolved, be dependent, so that Serbia be dependent on Brussels. Thomas Mann has a novel, Loyal Subjects. It's like loyalty, a kind of loyalty. No other independence or equal role is not seen by Brussels to Serbia. They just want to absorb and subjugate and to impose its will on other states. And I refer to Serbia right now. If there is no communication, normal communication in terms of financial, humanitarian ties with Russia leads to the collapse of their countries. They cannot do anything because they are tied with some obligations under the pretext of some collective auspices. In fact, they are being guided by bureaucracy imposed by the figures such as Ursula von der Leyen, Josep Borrell, and others. So the Europeans believe that this should have stripped Serbia of political sovereignty. And I believe that Serbia, being a freedom-loving, independent nation which sacrificed many lives and hardships, will stand strong, not because it's beneficial to Russia, China, or anyone else. It's because Serbs believe that they should take their own path of development. Thank you very much. Is Izvestia with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Meets Izvestia. We have two questions concerning that Ursula von der Leyen called Russia to show interest in regulating the conflict in Ukraine. What is the assessment of the Foreign Minister of Russia of the statement of the head of the European Commission on the need to show that it's willing to show its willingness for peace with due account of Russian position, which it showed on many occasions on this settlement? Our position, I mean the position of our country on the Ukrainian settlement, has been mentioned on numerous occasions at the top level and does not need any additional signals. Moscow has always been steadfast and open for the equal dialogue. And I believe that equality and equal dialogue is the basis of all this. Russia has always shown interest for mutually beneficial solutions, and as for the European Union, we see that they do not want to do so. I've just cited today that while speaking about peace, they were preparing for war, not to preserve peace, but to warm up and fire up tensions. And this proves that they are lying and that their ideology is flawed, because I don't see any sense in cooperating with them if they use ultimatums, claim unilateral concessions, trying to take over Russia. I believe that if we talk about the strategy, I think there is nothing wrong, but being cunning is good, but on the other hand, the lies they use, this is the manipulation based on the crimes, extremism, terrorism, and so on. And these are quite different things. There's no interest of Europe in settlement of the conflict because Europeans have not shown any desire to engage in a direct and honest dialogue with Russia. The day before yesterday, yes, there was a press conference between the foreign minister with his counterpart from Namibia yesterday. They discussed some awkward recalls of President of France, of Emmanuel Macron, saying that he wanted to make contacts with Moscow, although he scrutinized Moscow previously, but in December he said that he was willing to establish new contacts or to resume contacts but it all ended up to some assertive rhetoric and so on and so forth. The European Union has already forgotten the European diplomacy. They do not want to discuss the settlement of the Ukrainian crisis, but they are committed to torpedo any Russia and American initiatives in search for peaceful solutions. They are wiping up Russophobia and anti-Russia narrative. And it is proved by the digits and by the figures themselves, and I'm referring to their aid, to the funds sent to Kyiv. This is a kind of not even a military aid, but a financial aid and terrorist aid. The European Commission reported that it supported Ukraine since the start of the special military operation, and by beginning of January 2026 reached 193.3 billion euros, so over 193 billions of euros, unspeakable numbers, and 69.3 billion euros were allocated for the Ukrainian army. And as for the rest money, we've got to know from recent documents showing complete corrupt nature of the Kyiv regime. Today, I've already mentioned that for this money, using this money as well, they send children to Turkey, as they call it, rehabilitation, and children there in Turkey come back being pregnant.
Within this mission, more than 85,000 Ukrainian fighters were trained on the territory of the member states of the association. They are making cannon fodder out of them, and the British and the French continue to lobby the aggressive plans for the security guarantees. They should understand that this idea is unacceptable for Russia, but they stubbornly do that in attempt to attempt any constructive, peaceful settlement. Is this an effort to done to ignore that? I answered this question already. Is Sinhua with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Sinhua is here. With the introduction of visa-free regime, the tourist flow between Russia and China is growing, but some Chinese tourists care about the mobile service, accessibility of payment, and the registration during their trips to Russia. What measures does Russia make to make the presence of the foreign tourists more comfortable? And what tracks does Russia and China can strengthen cooperation? As you noted, the tourist flow between Russia and China is gradually growing. With the introduction of a visa-free regime, the number of mutual trips has significantly increased, and in 2025 exceeded 2.4 million. We are happy to receive guests from China and other countries in the world. We create all the necessary conditions for their comfortable presence. We are developing new tourist routes. We create modern infrastructure. There are no reasons to be concerned about the things that you mentioned. On the websites of our foreign missions in China, one can find all the necessary information to be prepared for the trip. In any case, for those who come to another country, there are things that are different from those they're accustomed to. And I'd like to say that when I come to China, certain inconveniences happen to do with payments, for example, because cards unfortunately do not work because Russia was de-SWIFTed. Unfortunately, we have to find alternative options. This inconvenience is manifested in various situations in various countries. We have to find ways out. Our countries should work to minimize inconveniences for tourists. And despite the fact that for many years people have been using cards, now I come to China. Unfortunately, I mostly go there on business trips, not for tourist purposes. If there is a need to pay for something, if I have to go somewhere outside the hotel, I have to do like our parents did. I have to change money in the exchange offices. And of course, this does not reflect the modern technological achievements. This is an opportunity to see what we can do for the tourists from our country so their presence is more comfortable. But let us finish on the positive note. Both in Russia and China, there are a lot of wonderful places, and I'm sure that learning more about traditions and culture of each other will facilitate strengthening humanitarian foundation of our relations, our friendship. I'm always happy to meet our Chinese friends. Welcome to Russia. We have a wonderful tradition. It appeared a couple of years ago, but it has come to be an important part of this important part of our year. I mean the celebrations of the Chinese New Year. It gives an opportunity with love and hospitality to show these traditions in Moscow. Moscow is an open platform for interesting cultural experimentations, and this experiment was very successful in my opinion. Traditionally, Chinese New Year takes place in Moscow, and it's a huge event. We will be happy to see Chinese tourists in Russia as well, and Russian tourists in Moscow at the events to do with the Chinese culture. Equally as wonderful, the Russian Muslims holiday takes place in China. And I think you know that already. I think it is also a wonderful tradition here. I just named a few, but from many, many more of them. Thank you very much. Thanks to you. You know, we have exchanged cultural years that were declared. They are over. They were 2024 and 2025. But they set a wonderful example for mutual humanitarian and cultural enrichment and implementation of a lot of projects. So I think it will be followed up on. There were events within the framework. They were in the interstate calendar, within the agreement. But also there were events, the public events, as a response to this. They became a part of this huge agenda. And I think that people understood, both here in Russia and in China, that it is interesting, it is beneficial. It is aimed at mutual enrichment in terms of culture and knowledge. And I think that this tradition will live on. to hold major, or probably not that major, events in our countries. Thank you very much. Thanks to you. Is China Media Group with us? We have one question. You already commented on the situation with the Greenland and the US in the first part of the briefing. Nevertheless, Donald Trump recently said that that the US is going to introduce 25% tariffs on any countries that trade with Iran. What does Russia think about this, the use of unilateral sanctions against sovereign countries? Are we going to change our cooperation with Russia's cooperation with Iran in key spheres, for example, in energy? This question was commented on in detail by our Minister Sergei Lavrov. He said, and I'm not going to cite, I think that you got to know that, and I will provide a link to this quote in the text of the briefing. Russia does not recognize, does not accept that, and we will continue with this approach. Our cooperation with Iran is beneficial. We are committed to cooperation in various spheres, including in energy. We will continue developing cooperation with all interested states based on our national interest. We won't be guided by the threats and blackmail of third countries. Thank you. Is Rita with us? Do you have any more questions, Rita? Yes, indeed. Good afternoon. Rita is here. We have questions still, though you partly commented on them. Question 1. It's about Greenland. Donald Trump is quite stubborn in saying that if the US won't take control of Greenland, it will be seized by Russia or China. It is not about the activities of Russia or China, but about the intention. What can you say about these words? First of all, I already commented on them. Second, why don't you want to ask the US president? Third, why don't you ask this question to all the European Union and the Western Europe? Only because Russia and China are mentioned here. I believe the main participants of this drama should be covered. In the first place, ask them what's going on with international law, rules-based world order. This is hilarious. I mean, indeed. We already talked about it today. I am absolutely sure that when they divided Serbia and Kosovo almost 20 years ago, a little less than 20 years ago, all the Westerners after they did not go to the UN Security Council, though they started a parade of recognizing Kosovo as a sovereign state, the whole EU proudly added one more star to their flag. But I think they did not think that they will forestall that. But why does this situation any different? Probably they thought that they will be saved by because of the loyalty of the US. Look what the Russian president said back then. That's when Vladimir Putin addressed the Munich conference, security conference, and the government actively commented on the situation around Kosovo with illegitimate annexation of it from Serbia. This was a precedent, and this can come to anyone. but the EU thought otherwise. They are untouched. They said that they thought that Russia was threatening them. They couldn't even imagine that they would be taken hostage of this scheme that were endorsed and designed by them. But let them enjoy it. Eat what you prepared. Don't choke. Thank you for this commentary. I have another question. It is quite multidimensional, but I would say that the previous one was not very specific. The president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, who was kidnapped by the US during the holidays, became the second president after Bashar Assad, the head of state that is friendly to Russia, that was toppled with force. Does Moscow see this as an assault on its positions at the international arena? Is it afraid of the mass protest in Iran? But please, let's pause here. Let's deal with this first. Venezuela, Iran, Russia, the US, and so on. Let's start with this part. If we are concerned, if we should be concerned about anything, but you said that it is a generic question. Well, if we are to be concerned, we shouldn't be concerned individually, but collectively. But we should be concerned by the destruction of international law. Some national vested interest shouldn't play a role here. Steps are taken every day that change our personal plans, our public plans. Every second something is going on, but such actions destroy the international legal system. What does this mean? Let's say as it is. Just like with Kosovo, that was seized, that was taken away from Serbia illegally. The strategy is now applied to Greenland and Denmark. Inside this coalition, I'm not talking about the global majority here, within the collective minority, with the Western minority, they don't have a pillar, the basis, so that these processes are stopped in the legal framework or to be settled legally. All those who said that the situation in Kosovo was unacceptable, these countries have something to rely on. And now we're talking not about the violation of somebody's agreements, union commitments, and so on. We are talking about the global undermining of the legal system. When there was an outrage about the situation in Crimea and Donbass, that ostensibly Russia acts illegitimately, we refer to international law that said about the will of nations, the right for self-determinations, and thus these references are not only theoretical, they are practically applied. This happens within the international law, probably as any other law. The provisions of the international law provide for various interpretations. There's no doubt about it, but this is a basis Now the territories are divided, and countries are divided without any reference to any international legal provisions and norms. That's what I'm talking about. That's what is going on with the interference into internal affairs and coup d'etats. No references to international law, the UN Charter, the conventions and treaties signed by anyone. They're not cited, they're not referred to. Listen to Kaya Kallas, as you mentioned Iran. She said that they need, and Ursula von der Leyen said the same thing, that they need to increase the level of sanctions pressure to make people in Iran even more turbulent, which will lead to coup d'etat. And they said that directly. The interests of all those who believe that international law should be respected. The rights of these people are violated. But the international law was a sphere that gave a chance to the world, to countries, to negotiate, to agree with each other on legal grounds, to bet not only on force, on the possibility to trick someone with force and some other things, and to rule the world. Without law, there is no democracy. Today, this is a threat to everyone who believes that democracy is the best system, because democracy can be applied not only within states. Democracy, as it is declared, including in the West, they are the perfect system. It should be demonstrated in the international.
So how can we talk about democracy in international relations where there's no legal system? Democracy is based only on laws. Because in order to define quorum, majority, or consensus, you need to have a law, not just an ability to count. Yes. If you don't mind, the second part of my second question. If the tensions are escalated in Iran, what help can Russia provide to Tehran? I believe that I answered to this question in my comment to your Chinese colleagues. Thank you very much, Madam Zakharova. So let's move on. Is France Press with us? Madam Zakharova, good afternoon. We have a similar question. So the most important that it would be similar because it coincides somehow with the previous question and not because you got some questions from somewhere. No, I think that's not possible. We have another question, maybe a surprise question. We had it today. In Niger, there is an outcry about the nuclear fuel that was allegedly, with uranium to be exact, ended up in the territory of airport in Niamey, in the capital. And Russia, in general, spoke out loud that it was interested in joint exploration of uranium in Niamey. Is Russia ready to get this nuclear fuel? But do you account that this topic emerged just during the briefing, and I need to have a look at what is playing out right now, and if it's so relevant, I can give an answer and then publish it. and we can answer you personally. Thank you. Is Anadalu with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Good afternoon. You've answered 2 questions, but we have a third one. We've just seen film Nuremberg. Can you share your assessments on the image of Russia? It's an American film. No, I haven't seen this movie. No, I haven't seen this movie because there are a lot of such movies, but I haven't seen this exact movie. When it was released, I think it was in December. No, I have not seen it. I will try to do so and come back with my comments. Thank you very much. Is Almaydin with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. I think you have answered to our questions, and thank you very much. Is Rudaf with us?
Thanks a lot for your time. And I have 3 questions, but you have already answered one of them. And I will start with my second question. Over the past year, the Damascus forces or their affiliated groups have reportedly attacked Druze, Alawites, and Kurdish neighborhoods in Aleppo. There are reports that these attacks might continue in other areas. What's Russia's position on these attacks, particularly the most recent one targeting Kurdish neighborhoods in Aleppo?
I would like to say that, of course, we were concerned about the developments playing out in Aleppo and this escalation, and we prioritize ensuring security of civilians and their protection. Of course, attacks on them is not tolerated by Russia. We are persuaded that the path towards a long-term, sustainable and robust normalization in Syria lies through negotiation with the participation of all ethnic communities of the Syrian society. And we believe that it is of principal importance to respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria. And the recent events confirm that the relevance of the task of the agreements on reintegration of the Euphrates region signed in March 2025 between Syria and the Syrian Democratic Forces leadership.
Is that in your discussions with Iraqi and Turkish officials, have you addressed security cooperation? Is Russia seeking to develop security cooperation with them, particularly through the sale of Russian weapons and new technologies?
We are in a close contact both with Turkey and Iraq on a wide range of issues of mutual interest, including regional and country security. So let me end up with this, if you don't mind. Thank you very much. We are moving on. Is Pakistan media, Duni News Pakistan, with us?
Pakistan, thank you for taking my question. I have one question today. Iran says that the recent unrest inside the country is supported by the United States and Israel. There are also reports that the United States may be preparing some kind of action against Iran. Does Russia think that the United States may try something similar to what it did in Venezuela? How does Moscow view the current situation around Iran?
Let me start by the second part of your question, and I've answered it today on many occasions. And we have statements published at the website of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and our Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, expanded on this topic just a day ago. As for the first part of your question about the attempts of the U.S. against Iran, Here I don't have any comments, because these questions should be addressed to the Americans. And we believe, and let me reiterate, that the toppling down of regimes cannot be tolerated by the modern community. Moreover, taking into account, if we are speaking about the respect for the UN Charter, here it's about the sovereign state of Iran with powerful democratic values and traditions, respecting democracy and history, their own history. But we see the Western countries, you've named the United States, you've named Israel, but you didn't name the EU, resorts to all possible tools in order to settle the situation and to affect and influence Iran, its leadership and its nation, to topple the current government, and are very open in their aspirations. I don't know if there are other plans. You need to address these questions to them. I think it's crystal clear that they weaponize economy, social and economic situation in order to pursue illegitimate coup d'etat. And that's what they are doing. I believe that no country in the United Nations has a right to resort to these tools and techniques if they respect the UN Charter. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Is Newsrule with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. It came out that many questions are interconnected today. The US President Donald Trump, I don't insist on your question, but it's important to us. Thank you. The President of US, Donald Trump, under pretext of ensuring security from Russia and China, said that he wants to establish control in Greenland, viewing it as a strategic interest of US. What is the prospects and perspective of Russia of this? Can it be lead to the dissent in NATO? So let us reflect on that a little bit. Neither Russia nor China claimed anything like that. There are no facts that can prove these accusations, and that's my first point. By the way, Russia and China recently have been claiming that they want to develop this region and relations with this region. For our part, it's a natural interaction. We are a part of the polar region. China has technological capabilities along with financial and humanitarian technologies. They have good production capabilities. China has ambitions to come into this region in terms of economic, financial, technological power. So I have a question. Speaking about and saying that the United States want to preserve this region, the Greenland, or any other neighboring region, and to defend it from any other claims, aggressive claims of Russia or China. I can say that we have no such intentions. It means that this region, they want to put it beyond, withdraw it from cooperation with Russia. And why? Because it's not a competitive player, I believe. I believe that our ways of cooperating with third countries and other ways to have business, I think it will be more interesting and attractive to these regions because we provide guarantees building on the international law. We respect international law and international treaties. We do not withdraw from treaties by signing just shortly before that with another country some agreement. We are not fooling anyone, withdrawing without any warning. We are responsible. Russia is a responsible country, international player, which means competitiveness, fair competitiveness in resolving differences based on peaceful solutions, on the equal dialogue, expecting the same attitude from our partners. That's why I believe this is all playing out. Because this pattern of behavior and pattern of cooperation on international arena suggested by Russia and China is indeed a powerful and robust basis for the development, the internal development, international contacts, and all they want is to discredit our country, using all these illegitimate toolbox available to them to oust us from this media and public space, and that's what we call neocolonialism. And that's the way it is. But the problem is that the West Europe, EU, believed that if they were members of NATO, if they have connections with the United States because of their membership, their belief, blind belief, and they went wrong. Thank you very much. Thank you. Is Balt News with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. The intelligence services of Russia said that the Constantinople Patriarch of Vartholomew is obsessed with the idea to oust the Russian Orthodoxy from the Baltic states, trying to distance the Lithuanian, Latvian, and Estonian Orthodox Church from the Moscow Patriarchate, trying to attract its priests. What are the aims of the Constantinople Patriarchate, and is it independent in its aspirations? Does the Ministry has any ties with the Moscow Patriarchate, and does it has anything to do with the church diplomacy? Let me expand on the last part of your question. Of course, the comment that was made by the intelligence service of Russia is a comprehensive comment. So we do not need to make our own comment, but nevertheless, let me speak up. I think that the Constantinople Patriarchate has been long before in the zone of interest of the Western states, and being very active in the countries which are trying to restrict in the rights of the Orthodox believers who do not want to tolerate with the imposed neoliberal values, who are against some non-canonic ideas. A lot of studies have been published on this topic. We believe that Constantinople acts in frame of political technologies supporting the so-called church opposition, dealing with some political dirty job, not rather than traditional beliefs such as rituals, traditions, philosophy, science. I think they all put it into oblivion. These are political machinations or technologies. Let me recall you that it's not a kind of a church opposition who does not support the official church. I think all these are breakaways. Patriarch Vartholomew establishes problems in the spiritual area in the areas where he could have avoided them. Of course, you should address your question more to the Moscow Patriarchate if you want to know the situation more. As for the protection of the rights of the Russian Orthodox Church and the the believers abroad. So these questions is under permanent focus of our foreign ministry. Respect of the rights of the believers, this is a sensitive topic and important one. Unfortunately, it's being at the tone of geopolitical interests, and even under the wheels of geopolitical interest. It demands not slogans, but a painstaking expert work. It requires a kind of political maturity and love to all those they are concerned about. It's clear that maybe you cannot see some small things behind the big things, but I think that Bartholomew should have seen great sufferings of people in Ukraine and ask a question even to himself. Where these geopolitical experiments led to, experiments to divide orthodoxy in Ukraine, because right now many families and people are surviving and preserving, trying to preserve their soul, fighting for it, with the Ukrainian army, dehumanized Ukrainian army, and this criminal government flooded with money. The situation with the rights of believers in the Baltic states is not better, even flagrant. We see that the Orthodox priests are being scrutinized in order to force them to change their church jurisdiction. We told them once that you need to think about such persecutions on the Russian-speaking population. They answered that it was a kind... No, that's true. They started to persecute all that is connected with the Russian Orthodox Church, Russian culture and language. The most high-profile actions are the actions of the Estonian parliament, who tried to legitimize interference of the state in the Estonian Orthodox Church. We have already given our assessment, and I'm talking about our foreign minister and the Minister on International Cooperation on that to ensure the rights for the freedom of religion by Mr. Melich on June 20th, 2025. As for the cooperation, we have something to say. We have a close cooperation with the Moscow Patriarchate on a wide range of issues of mutual interest, dialogue of culture, religions, protection of the rights of believers, help of those living abroad. And for these purposes, as you know, and I hope you know, back in 2003, a working group on interaction of the Foreign Ministry of Russia and the Russian Orthodox Church was established. The Russian Orthodox Church, as the major and respected public institute in our country, has the same mechanisms, consultative mechanisms, with many other bodies at the federal and regional level. We have an intense dialogue between other conventions, and you know, by the way, I would like to say, just not to give pretext to anyone, that we do not have such things. We have an active dialogue between other conventions, and it confirms that the high level of state confessional interaction in our country, and by the way, this dialogue, this is a work, and it's highly appreciated by the believers and parishioners, by all those who belong to this or that convention. They are grateful for this dialogue between the foreign ministry and various confessions, because it has practical outcome and aims to defend the rights of values that are very important to them. By the way, I would like to underline that the Minister of Foreign Affairs acts in strict compliance with the enshrined in the Constitution of our state, the principle of the so-called secularism. But right now, I'm speaking in good terms, with good connotation, when we are talking about inter-church diplomacy. Of course, we are not engaged in this. We help to answer the requests. We help where this help is needed, but not otherwise. We are not acting as mediators. Or some authorized borders. We respond to the requests and the tasks set before us by the relevant confessions that reflect the aspirations of its parishioners. Thank you very much.
Is the Kurdistan 24 with us? Yes. Madam Zakharova, good afternoon. I represent the Kurdistan 24 TV channel. I have one question. After the attack against Kurds by the government forces of Damascus, civilians died, including women and children. Now the armed Arab formations shell civilians and torture them. What can you say about this aggression against the civilians of Aleppo from the formations of Damascus? What can be done to protect people? I understand your question. I partly answered your question earlier. I touched upon this question. We follow closely the situation in Syria. On January 6th, the situation exacerbated in Aleppo significantly. In the northern neighborhoods, there were fights. On January the 10th, the authorities of Syria declared that they took control of the above-mentioned districts. We were concerned about the developments in Aleppo. According to the reports, civilians are among those killed and wounded. Tens of thousands of people had to leave their homes. Civil infrastructure was severely damaged. We prioritize the security of civilians. Such attacks are unacceptable. We believe that the path to long-lasting, sustainable stabilization in Syria lies through wide dialogue. It should be aimed at strengthening national concordance while accounting for interests of all representatives of all ethnic and confessional groups of the Syrian society. We believe that it is of principal importance to respect sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria. The recent development, I'll tell you again and again, confirm the relevance of the goal to implement the agreements to reintegrate the Euphrates region in the legal framework, in the legal space of the Syrian state. They were reached in March 2025. Thank you. Thanks to you. Is Lenta. Are you with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have one question. You talked quite about it in quite detail, but I would like to specify one thing. Donald Trump recently said the defense of Greenland consists of two dog sets, while Russian and Chinese submarines and ships are very close. The head of Donald Trump said that the U.S. will seize the island one way or another. How this will influence the relation between Moscow and Washington? I talked about it already while answering other questions. In the very material, in the first part of our briefing, I talked about it, and there was a question, not rhetorical, about what to do with the international legal framework. And but this is not an issue of bilateral relations between Russia, or between the US and Denmark and I don't know, with their self-governing territory, Greenland, or between Russia and the US, between China and Denmark, or China and the US. I'm talking about the whole system of international relations. And this is called the new normality in international relations. This is the new ethics. Or is it not? Or the international law is the ethics. When we talk that without international law, without laws that are respected by countries, not one day lottery tickets, but laws, everything will turn into chaos. We were told, let's not do that. We have a rules-based world order. The West said, we'll deal with that. But they did not deal with it. What does Russia and China have to do with that? I don't know. We have nothing to do with that. Earlier, the US and the current administration did not even mention us, but they just need some beginning to explain. We see chaotic measures from the EU, a lot of regiments for ostensibly protecting Greenland. Everything is clear. For a long time, the Western world has been in crisis, and this Western world says it for itself. Because they get metals, natural resources, gems, and etc. at their will. They do what they wish. But at the same time, the technological development, their aims that they set for themselves as their growth rates, financial indicators require more and more resources. But where can they get them? This is the question. They want to take them away from someone and to look for countries that are probably destabilized, but Russia and China have nothing to do with that. We want to negotiate and to respect interests, not only our interest, but also the interests of those that we have a dialogue with. We show that the resource-based economics, finances can be done with respect, that we can afford not to take away oil and gas from someone, not to expand, but to do that on mutually beneficial basis. China shows pretty much the same thing, that despite the differences in political systems, of traditions, it turns out that it is possible, equal competition is possible. This is not a model that the West has been pursuing for centuries, to take something away and to leave the country with nothing, and to say that they are unique. Somewhere here lies an answer to your question. Thank you very much. I'm waiting for this. They've always saying, the European countries used some covert statements or even some steps oppose the security, and They are told that a part of your country will be taken away. So I'm waiting where they are going to expel anyone or to invite ambassadors for conversations. This is the level of affairs. This is how they deal with things. Thank you. Thanks to you. Well, is the embassy live with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Good afternoon, colleagues. I have two questions. How does Moscow evaluate the possible court decisions regarding Nicolas Maduro? What steps can it take if he's sentenced to death? You know, according to the universal acknowledged norm of international law based on the principle of sovereign equality of states, Nicolas Maduro, as the head of state, has an absolute immunity from the jurisdiction of the US and any other countries beside Venezuela. Leaving alone the issue of illegitimate use of force, we commented already on that. The fact of his abduction and detention violates the international legal commitments of the U.S. Any court decisions will be equally as illegal if the U.S. court remembers the international law and rules to release him. You know, even Western media say that he was kidnapped and seized. The rant that ostensibly Nicolas Maduro is not president anymore and lost his immunity are not true, because that happened as a result of an operation of the U.S. Certain international legal norms exist. None of them were applied. That is why these actions are illegal. So I suggest we talk about this in the legal framework, not in the framework of predictions or anything else. Another question. Can we see the statements of the TV host Vladimir Solovyov about the second-rate importance of Venezuelan and Syrian tracks in comparison with Armenia and the Middle Asia as the official position of Moscow? Oh, let's see. We're talking about the personal opinion of a journalist. Opinion. This opinion was expressed at a private channel, Solovyov Live. Thought. I read the quotes, not based on some parts of his quotes and words, but this was a question. It was not a statement. It was a question, a rhetoric probably, but it's not up to me to decide. Besides, these phrases were clearly presented provocatively as an official position of Russia, but it is unacceptable. These kind of manipulations are unacceptable, and the commentators seized this opportunity to spread a number of quotes, neither in this or other programs, speculations about Russia ostensibly having aggressive aspirations regarding the neighboring post-Soviet states. In this regard, I'd like to, one more time, to say the official position is expressed by the authorized officials. As to the official position of Russia, it was expressed by the leadership of Russia many, many times. about our policy in the context of our common Soviet past, post-Soviet space, the relations with now sovereign states. I'll tell you yet again, this position has been expressed for tens of thousands of times during summits, negotiations, consultations, press conferences, interviews. They were expressed by the President of Russia, the head of the government of the Russian Federation, the foreign minister, a defense minister, of all kinds of ministers. Not to enumerate everyone, but I'll tell you that we regularly maintain dialogue through the existing and the post-Soviet space structures like CIS, CSTO. I'd like to mention that through the CSTO, there's a format of meetings of the secretaries of security councils. And these very structures and people who had them and numerous experts who work there, they discuss security on this our common region. I don't have an opportunity to provide all the links to you, to these position statements, to the signals. I'll tell you briefly what was said many, many times. We have historical relations of good neighboring, strategic partnership, friendship, brotherly friendship and cooperation. The key to development of our ties are good personal contacts between the heads of our states based on mutual respect and trust. And I would like to add from myself, we should judge by deeds. We came to help many times. We extended a helping hand of friendship many times. We expressed the best emotions, the compassion. We sincerely shared happiness and joy when we shared the achievements, our colleagues and friends in the post-Soviet space. We found ways out from seemingly dead ends. We overcame misunderstandings and other things. We responded to provocations. That's what shows the reality. And we shouldn't focus on provocations. Unfortunately, there will be numerous. Let's see the real, not by the fakes and false things. Thank you, Madam Zakharova. Thanks to you. And author E, please. Are you here? Yes, we are here. Congratulations on the belated holidays. You know, I thought recently, probably it has something to do with, I don't know what it has to be, what it has to do with, but let us congratulate with and I also would like to congratulate you on the upcoming holidays. There will be a lot of them. We have accumulated a lot of questions. How does Russia see the new security architecture in Euro-Atlantics and Indo-Pacific region, given the growing crisis around Taiwan and in the relations between the US and China? We talked many times that the hybrid war between the West against our country was and planned and provoked a Ukrainian crisis. A part of this hybrid war drew a line to attempts to implement security model based on Euro-Atlantic mechanisms and led to the collapse of this model. But probably it was not a reality. It was just a decoration. As a strategic reference point, we believe that this is the initiative of the President of Russia of June 14th, 2024. He put it forward here in this very hall. Our view to Eurasia as one common space is explained by mutual influence of military and political processes. It is not a part of the current situation, of the immediate response to the situation. We aspire to create favorable conditions for social and economic development of all Eurasian states. The united architecture would include, in our opinion, understanding and agreements to ensure security between the neighbors based on the principle of equality and indivisibility. The Eurasian countries should take responsibility for settling their own security issues, and the interference is not acceptable. You mentioned Indo-Pacific region. We do not use this term. In the context of the implementation of our initiative, we're talking about the geographic Eurasia. Is the continental Europe, Middle East, South, Central, Northeastern and Southeastern Eurasia. This architecture will be open to all European countries who would like to participate in its creation. An important role will belong to multilateral but not Euro-Atlantic associations. We are prepared to have a dialogue with those Europeans who will abandon the aggressive anti-Russian policy and destabilization of Eurasia.
Thank you. And my second question, what forms of international cooperation on cybersecurity and regulation of Internet of Russia advances at the United Nations and other multilateral platforms? We are persuaded that effective international cooperation on ensuring international information security requires participation of all states without exception. So Russia, along with partners from the developing states, established, let me explain why, because many ask why all states should be included. But we see now that the information security can be undermined apart from example, military and political aspect we were talking about earlier. As for the anti-missile system or some other types of weapons, we can see a kind of a model that threatens information security of the states, of the neighboring states, or the whole world, literally in one specific location, in a state which has no achievements in terms of information and technologies. We see that people right in the mountains or in the field or in the forests deploy tent or other shelters using hundreds, thousands of mobile phones, assembling a kind of a system to hack something. For example, websites, accounts, web portals, servers, accounts, and so on. Moreover, we've learned just recently, and I believe that at one briefing I will focus on it specifically, and it was awkward to me what we've seen. For example, earlier there were kidnappings of people, human trafficking for physical exploitation. People were forced to work, for example, as slaves in some fields, or people were used for sexual exploitation. Right now we're seeing a new type of crimes when people are kidnapped for the work in this cyber information illegal areas, for example, as operators of call centers installed on the territories, on the borders between the states, for example, if the states are in a state of a conflict or unsettled conflict, the zones that cannot be controlled, and such terrific and horrifying farms or call centers are being installed there. Farms that used such kidnapped labor force. I've never knew that people can be forced to do so as well, but it came out that there are such technologies forcing people to work even at this in terms of communication. So that's why I'm speaking about inclusion of all the states to ensure international information security. So Russia, along with partners from the developing states, established in 2026 the World Mechanism on Achievements in Information and Communication Technologies in the context of international security and advancement of responsible behavior in the use of it. On December 1st, 2025, this decision was adopted by the General Assembly resolution, and it's about the establishment to replace the temporary formats, a permanent negotiation board in all aspects of international information security. Along with the agreed procedure of work of its operation, all UN members will participate and all decisions shall be taken by consensus, not so saying that it will be all the decisions will be taken unanimously. Among priorities works is discussing the prospects of universal treaties in order to prevent conflicts and to advance peaceful settlement in information space, as well as support to the developing states. So two components I see here. It's the adoption of universal treaties to prevent such negative scenario and peaceful resolution of conflicts in the information space. Since May 2024, under the auspices of the United Nations, another important mechanism of cooperation in international information security is functioning. Russia initiated Global Intergovernment Directory of Contact Points on computer incidents for sharing information on computer incidents. It serves as a communicative channel in order to clarify the circumstances of cyber attacks and is called to serve as a professional venue for interaction of all the structures. The key formats to discuss the key regulation issues, the World Summit of the Information Society and the Internet Governance Forums are engaged. One of the main purposes of this platform is to ensure equal participation of all the states in governing the global network. And in this regard, the extension of the mandate of the World Summit of the Information Society is very important for the next decade, along with the achievement on establishing and extending the format of the permanent UN format on the Internet governance. We have established the framework and it's operating. And my second question is connected with Internet. What are assessments of the Minister of Affairs of the Minister of Foreign Affairs as for use of Internet as a tool to influence elections, and what measures is proposed by Russia in preventing these conflicts? If you don't mind, I would expand on that and in a written form, and then we can publish this answer. I will provide you an answer personally to you in a written form. Thank you very much. Thank you. Because it's a broad question, and I would like to expand on that, and maybe next briefing I will take it and expand on that. Is Ukraine Ru with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova, Anna Cherkasova, Ukraine Ru. I congratulate you with all the holidays. If you don't mind, I have two questions. Yes, please. Go ahead. Our first question. Jeffrey Sachs said that Europe, once again, injures itself, it seems that it lost any sense of diplomacy, and the only way out is to spend trillions of euros for arms. But earlier, in responding to my questions, you mentioned that Europe cut off all diplomatic connections and ties with Russia. Can we act likewise with the European continent like we did during the Hitlerite coalition? What is your question once again? Can we repeat the scenario of the Second World War? Let us stick in this regard some political literacy. We belong to the European continent as well. So I don't understand the term threats from the European continent. Russia is a European state. We are a part of the European civilization. We have very much in common. We have many religions, peoples, ethnicities, traditions. And we are the country which develops traditions of the European civilization and preserve them as well. For the western part of the civilization which has already lost them, and I'm talking about the culture, right, ethics, philosophy, science, and so on. So I think that your question is about military and political alliances, or, for example, the West. I think that's the way you should put your question. I think it's a question about our defense capabilities. We closely follow practical steps of EU and NATO to force militarization of the European countries, building up the military potential at the Russian borders, deployment of offense systems, large drills, provocative drills, and pumping of the Kiev regime with weapons used as a tool. And we make regular comments on that. And amid this aggressive line of the current European leadership against Russia and intimidation of its own population with war, and we believe that these questions are we take these questions very seriously. We cannot tolerate the actions that jeopardize our security, and we will be compelled to respond to this in our military planning, including the programs to update all types of weapons and military equipment. And my second question, Madam Zakharova, today we talked a lot about violations by the US of international law and laws. And what's the format with which the Minister of Foreign Affairs wants to build contacts with the United States? I think we should invite you to the press conference of Minister of Foreign Affairs Sergei Lavrov, and you can ask the question directly to him. And I think he will give you a detailed answer, because your question is a comprehensive one, and it needs a comprehensive response at the high level. Because we have a lot to say, and I think it will be interesting to listen to the answer from the minister. There are a couple of days we have before the press conference. Thank you very much. As I've said earlier, due to the fact that you have comprehensive questions, I will answer to your questions personally in a written form. And of course, all your questions will be answered. So once again, congratulations, my congratulations with all the holidays. And on Tuesday, on the 20th January at 11 a.m.